Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our continuing work with this subtle process of identification. I think we've been talking about the intuition, we've been talking about the abstract mind, and, minimally, I think we need the intuition or some instance of it in order to actually get inside what the words mean. DK has told us, that the Christ is the great expert in this question of identification, and that John 17 and certain phrases there tell us a little bit about how he works. So as soon as I welcome you, I'd like to read a little bit of that to get us oriented. And so I'm grateful to Michael for being here, and no matter what the hour may be. And hi, Anne Veronica and Anna and Anne and Annette, Catherine and Joe and Leon and Lori and Miro and Natni and Risto. So if I've missed anybody there, I'm sorry. It is, the wee hours in the United States, and still some of you are here. So that is always good. What is written in the King James Version of the Bible, which is, well, it's been translated so many different ways and times. He says, supposedly the Christ is speaking, and he says, "Neither pray I for these alone, for them also which shall believe on me through their word." We are spreading the news of what that perspective was that Christ was bringing to humanity. And then it begins this question of identification, that they may all be one. Every phrase here, is significant in terms of what we are doing. We're choosing certain occult language, and maybe he spoke to his disciples in a different language than he spoke to the multitudes. He spoke to them more in parables to the multitudes, and the secrets of the inner world, the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, were spoken to his disciples, but even they, of course, were not astute in learning, so he had to bring down great mysteries in simple language, that they all may be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, that they also may be one in us. And there it is, right there. And the Father, is what? The presence. You never know when people have inserted other comments that supposedly the Christ made, about believing in him and all of that. It's possible, but this is the sentence: that they all may be one, as thou, Father, art in me, and I in thee, and they also may be one in us. When I talk in third ray language about infuception and identifying as being, and I use a philosophical kind of language, it's all right there in that highlighted few phrases. And the glory which thou gavest me, I have given them, that they may be one, even as we are one. And there's no question that when we learn to identify as being, there is a glorification that occurs. So, let's see if I can get this properly. Okay, I'm going to make it bigger so it stands out. These are subtle, very subtle matters. And you only realize how subtle they are when it comes upon you, or when you find the way, So with identification, glorification occurs. And maybe I'll kind of, I might change that color, because it is, I've got too much purple going here. All right, so let's see. Anyway, with identification, there is glorification. And I'm not saying, it has to be the third initiation, but something happens which is different from the customary consciousness. And what we're seeking is definitely different from the customary consciousness. Okay, and then it goes on. Now, this is more of it. I in them and thou in me, that they may be made perfect in one. These are very mystical words, and it points in a way to him speaking from the realm of perfection on the atmic plane, which is the fourth subplane on the atmic plane. In other words, if we, let's see if I did this correctly, and I went to here, on this fourth level, we have the city or the power of perfection. And when Christ gave the Beatitudes about who was blessed and for what reason, he was speaking from the atmic plane. And so often the Buddha was speaking from the atmic plane, which has also been called the nirvanic plane. So it's a very high thing. And they've tried to impart to us some sense of consciousness from that level. So I in them and thou in me, that they may be made perfect in one. Think of those words. And that, well, we always come back to this. Did he say this? And that the world may know that thou hast sent me, but this he would say, and hast loved them as thou hast loved me. But I'm going to talk particularly of the identificatory parts of this 17th chapter. Father, I will that they also, whom thou hast given me, be with me where I am. And where is that? That is in a state of deep awareness of unity and being that you can appreciate from the Atmic plane. That they may behold my glory, which is really their glory, which thou hast given me, as he gives to all. And then this statement, for thou, and it would have to be almost an incomprehensible statement. It would be interpreted in terms of uniqueness of the Christ, which he never meant. For thou lovest me before the foundation of the world. And, you know, as students of esotericism, we can realize what that can mean. The world of being exists before the foundation of any world, before the creation of any planet or any emanation. O righteous Father, the world hath not known thee, and that's true of the presence, you know, let us say. Whoop, that's not what I want. Excuse me. I'm going to, yeah, this is what I want. I hope it comes here. The world hath not known thee. In other words, the world hath not known the presence, because that's how God, or, you know, any inclusive logos, appears as a presence and an ever-intensifying presence. But I have known thee, and these have known that thou hast sent me. And then it concludes here, and I have declared unto them thy name, and will declare it. Of course, it's almost inconceivable to the people who are, you know, well, at best, some of them were initiates of the threshold. It was only Paul, Saul as Paul, who was later substituting for Judas, and he went through the fourth initiation, as DK tells us, when he was writing the letters to the Hebrews. So anyway, I have declared thy name and will declare it, that the love wherewith thou hast loved me may be in them, and I in them. The love in them, and my being in their being. So, you know, it is mystical, it is mysterious, and it does need careful interpretation. But this is the chapter, and these few remarks, and I just choose the King James Version because otherwise you get into all kinds of difficulty with translations. Even in the King James Version there is difficulty, but at least they assembled the scholars and really worked at it. And then people have adapted what was said in very colloquial language, so you hardly recognize the esoteric import anymore. But as students of esotericism, we want to recognize the esoteric import. So I thought maybe to, you know, have some kind of ongoing meditation here as, you know, a little bit of comment and a little bit of meditation as we go on. We have been working with illumination, understanding, and love, the three qualities which define the intuition, and this sense of universality I guess above all else, this little series of discussions online is about cultivating the sense of universality. And I want to call it an articulated universality. It's not some kind of mystical blurring of the identity of all things. There is in Maya, in the great Mahamaya, which is the universe, there is an identity that one has to deal with forever. Most mysterious is Maya, and forever, says the great sage Shankara. Another instance of ourselves speaking out. So it's not just a mixture of things. Everything remains what it is in the realm of Maya, and yet substanding it all is this factor of universality. Let's just ponder for a moment. What does universality mean to you? And you know, as you go, you can make notes. We'll have our opportunity for discussing anything that you think may be of interest to you, because we have to try to verbalize some of these things. You know, the question comes up, can we make all things the same without making them the same? Always there's a paradox. Every time we have a universe, and according to the secret doctrine, they have gone on forever, without beginning and without end, which is a huge paradox, because how can man conceive of that which has no beginning? The series has no beginning, but universes have a beginning. And yet you cannot point to when in time and space they occur, because they've always been infinitely preceded, and there's no way to deal with an ordinal number like this is the 15th, this is the 16th, this is the 17th. You can't do that. You can only deal with an ordinal number like that from a starting point, but there was no starting point. So forever this sequence has been occurring, and the person who understands something about universality realizes that they can never get rid of the self that they essentially are. It's the one great fact, the one great, well, just the one great fact. I can't even say in the universe, because it's not necessarily in the universe. The universe, any universe, is a self-perception. But the sense of universality takes you beyond your ordinary mistaken ring pass knot. Like we all have a self-conception. I am this. I look like that. I like this. I don't like that. I think this and not that. We define, definite, definite. We define ourselves in a certain way. But the truth of the matter is that we are, in a way, indefinable, meaning that we are, in a sense, indefinite. We don't have limits, but of course there's something in us that craves to have the peace of mind that limits bring. Otherwise, people growing up through expanding awareness would not cling so desperately to that which limits them. They're not ready, and maybe we aren't either, but they're not ready to think of limitless selfhood. I kind of want to put that down. Thinking of limitless selfhood is a real mental challenge. It's much easier to define your ring pass nod, and that's where most everybody is. Now, when we're dealing with this kind of work, I'd like to read 7 little sentences which show different ray paths to limitlessness. Okay, so think of the 7 ray paths to, how can I put it? Limitlessness. And does anybody even want that? But if you keep peeling away the layers of what we think we are through the ancient method of not this, not that, not this, not that, you're going to arrive maybe eventually at something indefinable, indefinite, which you actually are. It's like the bedrock of your identity. So, before getting into this, the next little phase of meditation, this is these are what I call the 7 ray paths to limitlessness. I mean, the Tibetan has not said it that way, but in 3 different places, he's given these 7 sentences, and it depends on what ray you're working on. The Christ obviously was working on the 2nd ray. And when he leaves this planet, probably at the end of the Aquarian age, he'll be transferring onto the cosmic astral plane and eventually the cosmic mental plane, and will pursue the ray path for a while, who knows how long, which is the path of becoming a ray of love. And, thence later to the system of Sirius, we are told, which is an astonishing thought that this ability to go from path to path is apparently part of the dynamics, and it lies way, way ahead of us. However, if we can begin to realize that we as monads will be pursuing different paths according to our monadic ray, and maybe according to the way we descended long ago, then we're getting started, at least, in the pursuit of the reality we have always been. Now, you can learn 10,000 things about occultism, all those pieces of knowledge, and yet, in a way, not even know who you are. And that would be an unenviable fate. We wouldn't want that to happen. We would want the knowledge because it leads to real usefulness, and eventually it leads to omniscience within a sphere of activity. Not universal omniscience, no, it can't. Not for little emanations such as we appear to be. But we need what Master DK is giving, which leads to omniscience within a sphere, a certain sphere of activity. But we also need this other factor. And see, if I read these things, carefully, slowly, try to identify with the ray type that is saying them. Most of us are on the indigo ray, either in our soul or monad. But maybe, there might be other soul ray types and monadic ray types that for whom something here will resonate. So and read these with an open heart, not as anything sentimental, but as an organ of inclusive awareness. So he says, let the forces come together, let them mount to the high place, and from that lofty eminence, let the soul look out upon a world destroyed. And here is the sentence, then let the word go forth, and it should be, I still persist. I still persist. In other places in the book, the editor couldn't quite decide. I still persist, though, is given. Well, what is it that persists and ever has? The first ray type is going to discover that. And then for so many of us, let all the life be drawn to the center and enter thus into the heart of love divine. Then from that point of sentient life, let the soul realize the consciousness of God. And then the mantra, let the word go forth, reverberating through the silence. Naught is but me. You'll notice the word me is capitalized and italicized, and who or what. is that me? How do you look out upon a variegated world filled with seemingly endless variety and find only me? And then if you're strongly on the third ray, you get there too. Let the army of the Lord, responsive to the word, cease their activities. Let knowledge end in wisdom. Let the point vibrating become the point quiescent, and all lines gather into one. And then, to the point, let the soul realize the one in many. And when you use the word soul, it doesn't just have to be that encapsulation of soul on the higher mental plane. Monad has soul. Everything has soul. It's a universal principle of awareness. Let the soul realize the one in many, and let the word go forth in perfect understanding. I am the worker and the work, the one that is. I am the worker and the work, the one that is. There's a Saturnian element here. Whenever work is mentioned, and who is the one that is? It's not the you that's got a given name and a career and a life and relationships. It's not that. What is it? So, behind all activity and work is being. Being is fundamental, and out of it comes apparent movement. Parmenides and Zeno thought there was no movement ever. And they were dealing with the world of being, because being never moves. But when there is limited perception, limited self-perception, the factor of limitation necessitates activity. Non-limitation negates activity. I am the worker and the work, the one that is. Now, increasingly, the fourth ray souls and monads will be coming in. And they're not new to the earth. I mean, you know, in the very beginning, the 4, 5, 6, and 7 were present. So, okay, what would their ray path to limitless selfhood be? Let the outer glory pass away, and the beauty of the inner light reveal the one. Let dissonance give place to harmony, and from the center of the hidden light, let the soul speak. Let the word roll forth. Beauty and glory veil me not, capital Me, right? I stand revealed, I am. So who is the one who is not veiled by beauty and glory? Who is it that stands revealed and is? I used to go to Shakespearean plays at Stratford-on-Avon in Canada. And, you know, it was like a fourth ray heaven. And the great tragedies and comedies of Shakespeare were enacted in a replica of the Globe Theater. And it wasn't only that the plays were great, but when you were released at intermission or whatever onto the grounds, into maybe Elizabethan times, there was something there that beauty and glory did not veil. Something deeper than beauty and glory. Somehow the total effect of what was going on there lifted the veil of beauty and glory. And it became more visible, more tangible. And then in the beginning of the externalization, the fifth ray ashram plays its important part. Let the three forms of energy electric pass upward to the place of power. You see how connected it is with the first ray. Let the forces of the head and heart and all the nether aspects blend. Then let the soul look out upon the inner world of light divine. Let the word triumphant go forth. And then the mantra. I mastered energy, for I am energy itself. The master and the mastered are but one. master and the mastered are but one. Who is it that masters energy? And who is it that is mastered by the one that mastered energy? Well, it's hard really to define energy occultly. Limited perceptions change position relative to each other. That is, things move. And energy is the reason why they can move. Are energy and being the same? Maybe not. But the true occultist, he tells us at this time, is coming in on the fifth ray because you have such a deep study of energy that is necessitated in occultism. And then also the sixth ray finds its way into limitless selfhood. Which is the non-moving presence, the non-moving beingness out of which beings or existences come. The sixth ray, is always looking for something. And the Ajna Center can be very much involved in sixth ray process. The seeker. Let all desire cease. Let aspiration end. The search is over. Let the soul realize that it has reached the goal, and from that gateway to eternal life and cosmic peace, let the word sound. I am the seeker and the sought. I rest. I am the seeker and the sought. I rest. So one has discovered the self that one has always been. It's not a question of discovering different incarnations, nothing like that. Not even discovering different universes. which we really can't do yet. Nothing like that, really. It's something more fundamental, and it allies itself with the second ray mantra, naught is but me. Notice how in every one of these very inspiring mantras, two things are put together and seen as one. The word of power of the fourth ray captures it. Two merge with one. Remember, we're using this as a path to the intimation, the hint concerning our limitless, immovable, beginningless, endless selfhood. Think of the 15 of us right now. We're meditating together, and we're scattered all over the world. And we're the same being, not just in words, but in appreciated realization. Yogananda had the self-realization fellowship. It still exists, of course. But that's what his work was all about. See, realization is something, it's atmic, really. It's nirvanic. And it's the self that has to be realized. And if you find any difference as you perceive the self here and perceive the self there, you're not perceiving the self. And you're not identified as the self. There is no difference. In Maya, there is. In reality, there isn't. And all relationship will change if we can identify as the pervasive factor. The mystic said, break the twig. I am there. And finally, we have the seventh ray method towards this limitless selfhood. I don't have the right color, but okay. And it says, let the builders cease their work. The temple is completed. You know, you and I have not completed our temple, obviously. We're on the way. Let the soul enter into its heritage. And from the holy place, command all work to end. That holy place on the higher mental plane, perhaps. Then in the silence subsequent, the silence which follows, let him chant forth the word. Notice the word chant. When it comes to seventh ray magic, the creative work is over. I, the creator, am. Naught else remains but me. The whole creation, everything I've created, everything everyone else has created. It is me. Naught else remains but me. Who is that me? Who is that me? Lucky hit on the second ray note. And also the seventh ray note. Depends on where you start the scale. Okay, friends, well, I find, I find these seven sentences, or groups of phrases, I just find them amazing. And I think, and I ponder them all the time. So maybe you can do that too in your own way. I never get as far as I want to get. But then again, I'm going to say something strange. There are no intervals in creation. You know, we talk about moving from point A to point B. That's all in the world of Maya. You cannot move in time. There's no earlier, later, middle time. It is the eternal now. And you cannot move in space. There is no this point and that point. That's all Maya. I think one of the big things to settle down upon our consciousness is that you can't move. And there's no here or there. I mean, you know, to get the feeling of it all, we might say, well, it's all here. But even the word here asks that there be a there, I might say. So, you know, with Parmenides and, you know, many earlier philosophers, reality just doesn't move. There's no movement in reality whatsoever. And, you know, just using the word colloquially, we've always been here, even though you can find fault with that formulation. And that is a time annihilating, space annihilating realization. But in a way, if we want to overcome illusion, the very first illusion you have to overcome, and I'm not talking about the practical world now, that's a different thing. The very first illusion is the illusion of time and space. So when you start eliminating intervals, it's a very different state of being that we start to enter. You know, we are all, as it were, superimposed upon each other at a point which has no dimension. And you know, one day before long, we're going to take up the whole question of dimensionlessness. And I think it will be very interesting because it raises many questions. But really, reality has no dimension, and yet it is somehow the source of all myopic dimension. So that's another subject, and I don't want to mix the subjects too much because you know, otherwise we will become confused. And it's very easy to become confused when dealing with this. It's so simple. It's so simple that it can be confusing. Okay, so that's it. That's the kind of ongoing meditation discussion. I don't know what to call, you know, it's many little ponderings in the context of some thoughts, which may give a new perspective on the way to identification. You know, I've had friends of mine say, well, you know, you're really quite crazy to talk about identification and, you know, try to popularize it or spread it, you know. When people are ready, they'll get to it and whatever. But I usually feel quite compelled to talk about my favorite non-subject, in addition, of course, to all the other kind of detail that we always talk about as we examine the books. Because, you know, we have a parallel thing going on between everything and nothing. So I'll just open up the floor. Hopefully we don't fall in. Open up the floor, as it were, to any thoughts or questions that, or statements, you know, whatever, that you may have. And, you know, let's see if we can carry it a little bit further according to your own interests. And then at a certain point, if there are any burning questions that don't seem to exactly relate to this subject, then, you know, you can also bring them up as well, if you wish. Has to say, I guess we've concentrated pretty much on these 7 wonderful keys. It's the 7 keys to the 7 ray methods to do what? This is not preliminary material. This is material for those who have, you know, sort of been working at reality for some time. And maybe in other lives we have, and maybe we're still doing that. And so maybe these 7 stanzas or sentences or combinations are meaningful to us in some way. I know they're really, really meaningful to me, and I just love them. And I think that the Tibetan has given us something here that gets us into the being that we are. So, is there anything that you would like to say, write, ask, whatever?
Michael, Kim has written a comment. I resonate very strongly with one of the ray keys. I wonder if this is a sign that this might be my soul ray. I haven't done the PIP. I found it too difficult and taxing mentally.
Well, even that may be a hint. It is difficult sometimes, and then for some types it's just like easiest thing in the world. So even how one approaches the PIP may depend upon one's combination of rays. I'm working with Walter Pullen, and now he's, you know, wonderful at all this, and you know, we'll come up with more and more. Kim, have you? I made a video which explained the best I could, and unfortunately it's a long video. It went through the test step by step. If you have time to listen to the video or look at the video, it may help you in your approach to the PIP. Now, could this be indicate your soul ray? What is very interesting here is that Master DK, when referencing what he has in Esoteric Psychology Volume 1, says, I'm giving you all these Ray Lord names. And what's the use of it? And
We lost your volume for momentarily.
Okay. Am I back to volume? Wait a second.
You are back now.
How long have I been gone?
Just about 30 seconds.
Oh, that's too much. Okay. So let me go back to Esoteric Psychology 1, and let me know if I suddenly become nothing, Michael. He says, I've given you the Ray Lord names. Why have I done this? And he says, it's so you can discover yourself and your Ray. Now, those are wonderful names in Esoteric Psychology Volume 1, and sometimes you fasten on a few of those names and says, oh, this really describes my nature, especially my interior nature. And the very thing you're looking at right now, Kim, these 7 stanzas, they have that same kind of quality. They can be useful as keys to discover your race. You know, like when I read all this, it's the naught is but me that stands out always, always, always. I just know that that's the one that I have to focus on. I haven't destroyed all worlds and am still persisting, you know. I mean, others might do that. So yes, I would say indeed you could use these 7 and you could read carefully through the Raylord names in Esoteric Psychology 1 and see what really jumps out at you. Every year lately at the conference or over the video conferencing, I analyze all the Raylord names, you know, briefly. And so when you're listening, you can also listen to that analysis. I don't know where I began. I hope I began with number 1, with the first ray. I can't remember. But I decided it would be a good thing for the conference to take those really powerful indicative names and give a brief analysis of each one, each name. So you can maybe find that in one of my morning talks. It's usually the first little talk that I give the day after, or the morning after our opening event. But yeah, look for hints and clues everywhere, and when something jumps out at you and provides a hint, as could be the case right here, and could be the case with the Raylord names, then use it. Does it necessarily indicate your soul ray? Well, maybe, maybe not. These are pretty high statements. Could it indicate your monadic ray? Yes, but most of us are not to the point where the monadic ray is a big feature in our ordinary life. The more we pursue being and identification with or as being, it indicates that the monad is coming in. So it could also indicate that. But if we have quite a strong personality, these Raylord names might capture that as well. So we don't want to necessarily pin it down. Yes, it could be your soul ray. And then if you find when you go over to the Raylord names, the same ray popping out at you, then maybe that's some kind of confirmation. As for the pip, it's not the last word in anything. It's just a jumping off point, that's all. A quantitative jumping off point. And, you know, people have survived it. Walter and I are working now on the Terra. It's transpersonal astro-rheological analysis. So it's got 888 questions, and it's a whole month-long process. The PIP is easy compared to that, really. But, you know, each to his own, and sometimes one fine day, you're just walking along, bango. The ray that you're on hits you, and you just know it can't be anything else. So that's the direct knowledge of it. So I would say, yeah, study these. It can indicate some high rays that you have.
Michael,
Yeah.
if someone is resonating with more than one of these uh, ray methods or more than one of the ray lords, it could be a matter of just trying each one that is in resonance to some degree for a couple of months and seeing how they work.
The Arcane School uses that method. And at least, in the days when I was working there, I seem to remember it and try it on. Absolutely. Because a guess, a hunch, and a thought, it's one thing. But then try to live with it for a little while. Like you say, it could be, well, it could be a week, could be a month, 2 months, whatever. And then, try it on. Yes, I would try it. I've used that method. And sometimes it has an indication as to what's what. But oftentimes, something about your ray chart is going to pop out at you. It may not be the soul ray, or it may be the soul ray in combination with some other rays, but something will pop out at you if you study carefully the names and something like what we've been doing right here. Now, of course, our purpose in studying these 7 is sort of what remains after the veil lifts. This is a little different because what I'm going to say now is important. Being has no ray. But what comes out of being, which is absolute infinity, has all the rays, and it's a limitation. And DK actually at one point describes how rays are limitations and that we can move beyond that altogether. But people like you and me, we're not ready to move beyond that. We have, first of all, to find out what we have and to use it. And even planetary logoi and solar logoi and whatever kind of logoi re-grasp the whole ray hypothesis and use it in their great journey through to the acme of cosmos. Everybody, okay. Every emanation is either going forth or coming back, or maybe treading water in a certain position for a while. But it's usually involution or evolution, and maybe there's a turning point where, you kind of say with the prodigal son, I will arise and go to my father. Even the servants, even the animals were doing better than I was in my father's home. So that's a temporary resting point. But usually we're either coming forth or going back. And the rays are significant along both of those.
We just lost your audio again.
How long?
Just a few seconds before I let you know.
Okay. Tell me something. I'm going to disconnect something. Do you hear me?
When you disconnected, no, did not hear.
Now, but do you hear me now?
I do hear you now, yes.
Okay, now I'm just going to talk into the computer, and I'm hearing you off the computer, so maybe this will be better. I might have some little trouble with this tiny little cord. Maybe that's the problem. Okay, so let's see. As I say, the great beings have rays too, and the great septonate and the Trinity and all that, that exists at the very top of the universe, the top of the pyramid. So we can always use that. But some of what I'm driving at here is that being has no
We lost you again.
I don't know. Am I back? Am I back?
Now you are back.
Am I back? Do you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'll just have to get a new whatever. Okay. Anyway, out of being comes all quality. Being itself has no quality. It's the same as saying being has no points, and yet being is the source of all points. So there's a lot of paradoxes here, mysteries, you might say. So let's study the rays, absolutely. That's what DK has given us. But at the same time, we're trying to get under all that. We're trying to understand, to stand under, and look at the, I'll use the word substratum or substance, which means to stand under, out of which all these rays and everything, astrology and all that, out of which they come. So we'll have to do both. Okay. All right. Is there anything else?
I'm not seeing any hands raised or anything else written in the chat box. One thing that came to me was that the exercises that we are doing in these meetings are those symbolic first steps on the journey of 1,000 miles.
Yes, even a journey of 1,000 miles, or what do they say, 10,000, whatever, before they could name those big numbers, begins with a single step. And it's like the idea that alignment is both the beginning and the end. And these exercises, what else are you going to do except have some exercises? Of course, right now the moon is in Virgo, so I can get on the soapbox about that. Virgo is the great sign of practice makes perfect. And, what we're trying to do is practice some things that we usually just talk about. Talk is okay, but talk is not realization. See, where is realization? Well, where? I'll give you a map, right? Here, let's see. Well, I'm not doing too well there. I would like to, I want to show you something if I can find it. That's usually the case. Can I find it? So I'm going to go to, basically, I'm not showing anything yet, anything different. But I'm going to go to this thing called Alice Bailey diagrams. And, I'm going to go to something that Keith Bailey put together, which is kind of a blending of many things. I got to find it, huh? There it is. Okay. So let me see if I can get that to register for you. I think so. And there it is. There's the map of many maps when we're dealing with the powers that grow up within us as we progress. And I said, talk is not realization. Realization is a very high thing, and here it is. It's on the third or fifth level of third from below, fifth from above of the atomic plane. And what these little exercises are meant for, and I've got loads of them, but they all revolve around the same thing. Realize yourself as being. Yeah, that's it. Realize yourself as being, and realize that it's all taking place within you. When I say taking place, obviously I'm talking about activity, am I not? And I've just gotten rid of activity as a reality. Activity is the main, activity is based upon division. Because if there is movement, it's got to be one thing relative to another, and the minute you have more than one thing, you have division. And we're saying though, wait, reality is indivisible. It can't be divided. But okay, we have to deal with it forever. And even, the foundational activity, can we think of any other that's more fundamental, is the great breath itself. Or at least somehow, when activity is related to the universe, it is the great breath, which is the great timekeeper. It becomes space and it becomes time. Now, obviously, we've got to deal with that forever, just the way Shankara says. Most mysterious is Maya, and forever. But deep, deep down, we have to realize that being does not move because it is indivisible. And only with divisibility, which is the result of limitation, can there be movement. So when we begin to discover that which does not move, that which does not change ever. Now, Heraclitus said, nothing is constant but change. All there is change. Well, in terms of the world of becoming and the world of the emanated universe, that is correct. In terms of beingness, real reality that we're trying to realize, my old teacher used to say, see it with real eyes. He was playing around with words. Realization is something the masters have on the atomic plane. And they realize the fundamentals about Maya and reality. And these little exercises that we're doing, as Michael said, they're moving us inch by inch, step by step, millimeter by millimeter. They're apparently moving us into the state of realization. And that's what this kind of course is all about. It's not about knowledge. It's about realization. Does that make sense? Because everything, has to finally make sense to the reasoning mind if we're going to arrive at the straight knowledge, which is pure reason. What do you have to know, basically, in all of this? To be spiritually useful and successful, you have to know the constitution of the human being and the next step ahead, and that's it. Those are the two fundamentals, the constitution of the human being and your next step ahead, and maybe the next step ahead for your community, nation, humanity, whatever, but at least your own next step ahead. And then those are the practical things. But it also comes to participating in that. Well, words they're going to fail, okay? But participating in that which never changes, never has changed, never will change, never can change, except in its myopic projection. Now, if that appeals to you, as you are now and as I am now, if that appeals to us, then we have entered few baby steps into the curriculum of being, which is not the same thing as the curriculum of relativity or relativity. It's a paradox. Relativity doesn't really exist, but we have to realize that, and yet realize that it will be actual. Relativity will be actual forever, cyclically, and has been forever. Now, these are words, but behind every effort that we're trying to pull off here is this question of realization. At least some little trickle of realization in our most apparently limited state. And those of them will peel off layer after layer after layer, layer after layer, until we're left with what? And the whatness of what we're left with, that will be illuminating for us. And maybe another way of saying it is that the illumination and straight knowledge that comes with the intuition will reveal universal, and here's a Buddhist word, universal suchness. I think that's the way it's been translated in Buddhist literature. Universal suchness. And then our life will change in terms of its perception. And we'll be able to see same and different simultaneously, which was one of the goals in Greek philosophy, to see, or to deal with same and other, or same and different. Okay, is there anything else, Michael, that has appeared?
Kim is asking, where can we find a PDF of this chart? Is it in your AAB extract files?
I wonder if this chart, really, Keith made this up, and AUM, Ancient Universal Mysteries, uses it, and I'm sure he's okay with serious use of these matters, of these charts. And I'm trying to think, have we put it on Makara somewhere? Maybe BL would know if we have some of these charts on Makara, because it's possible that things are just there and there's so much that we don't even know they're there. So, I have nothing against the serious use of such a chart, as long as the attribution is given. I remember, a long time ago, he and I were working on these kinds of things. 30 years ago, back then in New York, and gosh, even longer than that, half a lifetime ago. And we first let's check and see what we have on Makara, and then we can try to find another way that they can be used cautiously, respectfully, not just everywhere, but for selected purposes. So we'll try to manage that, and I'll try to work that out with Michael and Joe and BL. These are communications team here that does such a fantastic job. We'll get stuff to you, so that you can use it. Okay. I think we're
And
just yeah, go ahead.
I'm not seeing any hands or other questions. Here's a comment question from Anna. Christ came to ground us into his being, so the Antakarana can be built between our spirit and mind, so love and faith.
So love and faith and will. The interesting thing, the gossamer thread of divine will, well, that took place and set an example for humanity through Christ's struggles in the Garden of Gethsemane. That's when the great statement, Father, not my will, but thine be done. When that happened, that anchoring took place. So then he realized that he would become not only the great exemplar of love and faith and the light, I am the light of the world, but that his work over the next, it would be, like 4,000, 4,500 years, would always involve more and more of the divine will. And yet, when we talk about will, love, and intelligence, which is the ever-going, ongoing trinity we're always dealing with, we're dealing with derivatives of being. Sometimes it's easy to get confused and say the first aspect of divinity is being. It's not. I found myself falling into that too. The third aspect is light. The second aspect is love. The first aspect is will. And then being, through identification, which would be related to the higher mysteries, at least, around initiation 2, when the Antakarana can really start being built in earnestness. This being is something unique. It's not any of the aspects of divinity, such as will, love, and intelligence. And it's really hard to deal with in a way. It's so simple. That's why, in a way, you can't say it's this, you can't say it's that, not really. But you have to realize it. So I think one of the things we have to do is keep the aspects of divinity distinct from each other, and yet they are all one somehow. And we have to keep them distinct from beingness, which can grow on you and grow within you. It's already there, of course, forever, but the realization of beingness is what we're after. And that is no one aspect of divinity. So actually, you probably read The Reappearance of the Christ, and the Christ has come for many reasons. Huge cycles have just ended and are beginning, and humanity has a chance to step into the wisdom of the fifth kingdom of nature. All kinds of things are going on. and the planetary second race soul is emerging. For many reasons, the Christ has come. And, he will teach in a way that can be assimilated. But, there's always the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, about which he discussed with his disciples in private. There's always that. There's always the parables, and then there's always the straight truths from which the parables come. So when Christ comes to teach, he won't only talk about these extremely arcane matters. He'll be extremely practical, and in the reappearance of the Christ, as the Tibetan sees it, all of the forthcoming teachings of the Christ are mentioned and discussed, the main ones as the Tibetan sees it. Now, what we're trying to do here, we assume that people like ourselves will really stay practical in our service. In this myopic world, people need certain things. There's a lot of deficiencies. A true server, they look on and they realize that this person, this individual, really needs X, Y, or Z. And they do what they can within the law to facilitate the acquisition of X, Y, and Z. That's what the Tibetan did with his wonderful letters. He had these students, very imperfect students, just like me, just like you, just like all of us, imperfect. And along comes the teacher and says to himself, you need X, Y, and Z, or X, Y, or Z, and starts to set up the conditions under which that acquisition can occur. And that is practical service. But we're also digging very deep here in the attempt to stimulate something at the frontier of human development. And what is that? That is the intuition of reality and straight knowledge of being. Now, you can't go out in the world and start there. You cannot. Because, the ladder hasn't been built high enough that anybody's going to know what you're talking about. But among the serious students of occultism, spiritual occultism, and the serious students, let's say, of Masters DK, you can begin, like Michael said, a few baby steps, a few initial steps, a few steps for the journey of 1,000, 10,000, a million, however many miles you want to go. You can take some steps. And that's what we're trying to do here. Steps towards realization, if I can call it that. I guess I would, if a phrase comes to me and it seems worthwhile, I'll write it down. So, steps towards realization. I'm just writing that down. Look, this is an endless study, really. And our meditation takes us deeper and deeper into reality. Now, if you have a thirst for reality and you're tired of entertaining your consciousness with non-reality, then this kind of pursuit is for you. It's a bit like when Master Moria says, there's two kinds of courage, and they are both equally effective. And I may have mentioned it. So you get there using either kind of courage. The courage of desperation, which is what Blavatsky said, hey, for some people, theosophy is their last hope. The courage of desperation, you have wrung all of the changes, you've been through it all, you're unsatisfied, you're desperate for the truth. That's one kind of courage, because if you have that kind of courage of desperation, you'll do just about anything to get there. Just like the yogi master who held one of his potential students, a teach me, teach me, teach me type of student. So he dunks his head underwater, and then after quite a while lifts it up, and the kid is gasping for air. And the master calmly says, what were you thinking about? What, when you were underwater? And the boy answers, air, air. I had to have air. So he says, the master says, well, okay, when you want the wisdom as much as you wanted air, come back and see me. So the courage of desperation is the beginning. And then comes something we might say, well, it's even better, but okay. It's the courage of the flaming heart. The courage of desperation and the courage of the flaming heart. These are the things that will get you there. And it takes a while to develop this. I don't know that any of us has, in any measure, fully developed either of these two kinds of courage. It's like in the AA programs, and 12-step programs, you have to hit bottom, they say, before you're really ready to benefit from the program and do the 12 steps, which are very spiritual, It's a
Michael.
real, yeah, dear. Yes, dear.
Oh, yes, I was just wanting to add something. What I am, when one is diving into the depths of the reality, and for me, the life is something which is very much translated into me, even though it's not telling about it. And I don't mean that kind of life, what if you say in a mundane world, you say that I want to have life or something like that. And then one is translating it that then one wants to be actively in the human phenomenon. I don't mean that kind of thing. It's something like then here in the north when it is stormy, or you are under the night sky in silence, and you just start to look into the depths of the darkness, and it just takes you within into something what makes like your consciousness exploding, that it turns around, it goes upside down somehow, and there you realize that this life is about something so deeply about oneself.
1 second to you. Unfortunately, my hearing. Did you say light or life?
Life.
With an F.
Life,
Okay.
like F. Yes.
Okay.
Like
okay.
that.
I thought so. I thought
yeah.
so. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Like it is pouring into and from within and from without, and it something about that what makes then one's mind not to able grasp it, but somehow then you grasp it in very deep sense where everything is dissolved of this life.
It is beyond the mind, which doesn't mean we abandon the mind ever, because even the great logoi have the mind. But the method of being, of registering what you're talking about is different from the method of thinking. You know, it's a different approach. And
Yeah,
I really,
it's like opening a door and then another door and then other door, and it just continues. And that is something about this, that somehow only mind can grasp it, but cannot grasp that way how we are using our like points of understanding. But there's something so deep stored, and then one becomes very powerful, because it does not matter whatever are the circumstances and whatever it is, one is just so very content of everything, how everything is. And you are, how was that wonderful poem? Invincible?
invictus means, invictus, unconquerable is what it means.
Yes, unconquerable.
Yeah, yeah. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Yes, it ends that way. And, you know, like Nelson Mandela had that, you know, that was his inspiration during those 21 complete Saturn cycle of imprisonment. You know, so it's a great first race statement. And the first thing, you know, Roberto Assagioli had what's called the egg diagram. And the egg is like being itself. But the very first thing to come out of it is the will, this power, you know. That's the first emanation of the egg of being. And then the other aspects emerge too. So I really, I think I know what you're talking about here. And it's up to everybody to find it their own way. And it's so simple that it's the most difficult thing in the world to become consciously, to apprehend, until a certain point is reached. And then once we are the monad and the monadic consciousness, we're just living as that all the time. We live as being all the time. For the rest of us, it comes now and then, you know, maybe. But we're having to learn the scientific approach, the science of the realization of being. It depends on your way, you know. Different people are going to arrive in different ways, but we will arrive. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you.
For those
yeah.
who are interested, I put in the chat box a link to this particular chart. On the page that is linked, there's another link called Charts and Graphs.
Okay, great. That's good. I know, Keith, you know, as long as things are used with serious purpose and not just wildly distributed to anybody who maybe not care, you know, he'll be for it. So you know, we have to have gratitude to everybody who has done a piece of the work. Everybody brings their little bit to the work. Whatever bits we have, they're all little, you know. I mean, we can write 50 volumes and it's just a drop in the bucket. So we all bring our little piece to the great accumulation, which brings realization eventually, understanding of the work and realization. Yeah.
And Anna writes, love of Christ reveals intuition, fifth petal of egoic lotus. And love is the process of going deep within, so the will is awakened, stimulated, and dedicated.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in what you just said. I will say, amplifying on that just a little bit, that from the synthesis petals, synthesis knowledge, synthesis love, synthesis will, that surround the jewel, you will get further expressions of the intuition. Because the interesting thing about the formation of the egoic lotus is that the 9 normal petals are the result of the efflux of the monastic permanent atom. But the efflux coming from the Buddhic plane, the plane of intuition, has created the synthesis petals, which open up, pretty much after various initiations until they spring open, as it says, burst open, right before the 4th initiation. And then, the jewel is atmic monad and so forth. So, I think it's a good thing too, Anna, to make those formulations the way you just did. Write it out to yourself in a way that really makes sense to you. And, try to use your best ability with words to formulate, it's a formula after all, what you perceive as the truth. I got very stubborn at one point in my life. I think I was 20, in my early 20s. And I was so keen on understanding. I had, just joined the Theosophical Society. And, basically I was a music director and the director of opera and that kind of stuff. And I at the time, that I was doing the heavy study of the Isis Unveiled, Secret Doctrine, Manly Hall, whatever. And I made up my mind. I said, I'm not understanding a thing I'm reading. I'm going to read in such a way that if I come to something that I don't understand, I'm not going to go one word further. I'm going to define exactly what this means to me until I understand it, and then I will move on. And although it was very tedious, and it lasted maybe some months, I found it to be a valuable exercise because I did not accept glossing over anything until I could define it in my own words. And with what you just wrote, I got that. It triggered in my thought that we have to define what we think we understand in our own words, because that's the most important, and not just kind of loosely accept what somebody else says without really analyzing it. So it's a piece of advice about how to go deeper if one is patient with the process. Because then you read in depth, you dig the deep well instead of zip, 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 zip. What have you gained? I also took a speed reading course, as many of us did. And I said, well, isn't this nonsense? I'd much rather study in the vertical sense, digging deep with every concept than just zip along imagining that I understand something. If I can't put it in my own words, I don't understand it. Okay. Anything else?
We are approaching the end of 2 hours in this meeting.
Guardian of the gate, thou shalt not exceed. Okay. And I trust my microphone has not been going out and in. Is it okay?
It is okay now, yes.
Oh, maybe it was an evil spirit or something. I don't know. Anyway, for a few dollars, it's possible to get something maybe that works. Okay, friends, so what we'll do now is close with the great invocation. And tonight, important meditation, reappearance of the Christ. It'll be a broadcast at the same link we always use. And Michael has created the situation so that every time we have Zoom, well, basically, every time we've got one of these webinars, it is for the moment the same link. Same link for identify as being, same link, same but different from being, for cosmic fire and depth, same for glamour, I think, Michael. In other words, there's a consistency with each subject. So we don't have to always have some new link we're looking for when we're dealing with a particular subject. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men, let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Om. Okay, friends, maybe see some of you tonight at the reappearance of the Christ meditation broadcast, and then tomorrow morning, Cosmic Fire in Depth, and tomorrow evening, Glamour, Dissipation of Glamour. Fortunately, the world, or unfortunately, the world keeps producing plenty of it, so we've got lots to do. And then onward in the usual way with Destiny of the Nations, the Soul of Nations, and the attracting financial resources for hierarchical work. And pretty soon, full moon's coming up. And Tuya and I and Michael will be getting together. For those of you who want to join the Esoteric United Nations, there is that commitment that we ask everybody to take. So we have to find a time for everybody to make that short statement about sticking with it, you know. Okay, thank you for all your work and for your presence. Lots of love, many blessings, and we'll be in touch with you. Can't help it, you know, being the same being, it's a bit more than being in touch, isn't it? There has to be one thing divided from another to be in touch. So here's to being you. All right, never mind. Have a nice day, evening, night, whatever it is for you. Bye-bye.